Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 331, featuring Saul Rogers, founder and CEO of Rewind. I have known Saul for many years. He and I hung out quite a bit during my time at Stuttgart when I was there. And he's a very, very interesting person, very kind and entertaining person as well. But he has been Mr. VR in the UK and actually worldwide for a while and does some really, really interesting things. Kristen, what did you think of some of the cool things that Saul was sharing with us on this podcast?
Well, I call him a virtual world connoisseur. Just his love of VR, how he developed it into this amazing career. It was so interesting to learn just the connection it brings to people, especially during this time. He talks about just how valuable it really is in our world today. And I liked how he talked about esports. And this was a good point, how humanity loves risk and how we love sports, but this esports now has just taken off by storm. So that whole section was amazing. And then just the future technology that will be available soon. It's just going to expand into amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was very interesting when you think about VR and sports, and it just something a little bit different that we're talking about. And there's a lot of cool stuff that Rewind's doing and that Saul's been involved with. And I think esports is fascinating. Kristen, you know very well that I'm not necessarily a big sports guy. I don't watch football or basketball or baseball or anything that much, but the concept of what esports is and the fact that it's going to grow to such an extreme is fascinating. But not just that. I mean, like you said, Saul really knows about VR and has been thinking about it and thinking about the implications of what it does for a long time, and has turned Rewind into an extremely successful company because of that. I did reconnect with Saul through the real-time conference, which obviously makes sense based on what he's doing. And it's really cool to do that. So anyway, really great having Saul on, and I really hope that someday I'll be able to hang out with him, but we'll see. We'll see when that time comes. Okay, Kristen, we have a couple of cool big announcements finally that are coming, not necessarily in terms of events right now, but we've got some new products that came out recently. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so V-Ray 5 for Maya and Houdini Update 1 is now available, and you can find out more about this at chaos.com.
Yeah, these are big updates, as we mentioned. The big thing that we're doing here is USD support. We have a lot of great support in USD on Houdini side. We're definitely, in terms of the Maya side, it is an initial support, but a lot of great stuff has been added. It's definitely very usable inside of Maya as well. But really cool things. We're doing, looking at Hydra and delegates, and there's a lot of things we can do with USD right now. And that's obviously a big deal. A lot of people have been asking about that. So if you guys are Maya or Houdini users, definitely check out Update 1 because it's a big deal. And what else is happening?
The Vantage Update 1.3?
Yes, Vantage Update 1.3 is out, and that is going to be, that's a lot of cool stuff going on there. We've added some new shaders and shader support more specifically, and a bunch of other things as well. So go check it out, Vantage Update 1.3. Now, if people want to know more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us on YouTube, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have ideas for other podcasts or would like to give us some feedback, we would always love to hear from you. labs@chaosgroup.com is our email. You can always reach us there. You can always give us a feedback and a review on Apple Podcasts. Those are always welcome. And share us with all of your friends. All right. That being said, please enjoy this amazing podcast with my good friend, Saul Rogers.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, You need to make sure everything has fun now.
I have to say, usually when you and I get together, it is at the local bar at the Maritime Hotel in Stuttgart, Germany, where
Absolutely.
we have hung out for long periods of time and enjoyed lively conversations with the likes of Ken Perlin, who is known as the guy who makes Perlin noise. It was used on the original Tron. But yeah, it's generally, those are the kind of things we've done, but I haven't really had the opportunity to really sort of have a long form conversation with you about your origin story and what's driving you and what you've been up to. So give the audience a little bit of that story. What's Ken's background? Soul's background. I was talking about Ken.
I was about to say Ken's background. I can try.
Ken's background, we know that one. Yeah. No. What's Soul's background?
It's a good story. I mean, so the short version, and then I'll go to the long one. The short version was I trained in animation and visual effects, went and worked for Sony for a while, making PlayStation 2 games, went back to do a master's. During the master's, did some teaching, realized I love teaching far more than probably I like doing. So I ended up becoming a university professor at Hertford University in the UK, which is still ranked #1 by the rookies every year for quality of animation students and game students. And I did that for 12 years, wrote 4 degrees, 2 masters, supervised some PhDs, didn't do one, far too difficult, didn't want to explain myself to other humans that much. And then thought, well, I'm going to die in the best job in the world. I better do something else. So I started a company. It can't be that hard, right? And I was wrong. It's really, really effing hard, really hard. And that was 10 years ago. And so we founded Rewind, and me and a good buddy of mine, Matt Allen, and we just did some kind of visual effects, some kind of high-end CG, lots of architectural visualization. And before I knew it, we kind of gathered pace, and there was about 10, 15 people, and then we got our own office, and then there was about 30 people, and the first kind of DK1 came out. And I realized that having done what we did before, which was animation, visual effects, games, 2D animation, the tools were basically the same across all industries. They were just narrowly focused. So you could use them in architectural visualization or visual effects or games. I was like, well, the games tool can be used in the architectural and the visual effects industry and vice versa. So we were already kind of very comfortable moving the team around between tools and deliverables. And so as VR was gathering dominance and pace, we managed to get ourselves out in front. We were a flag bearer by so many different industries where, no one's used VR for allowing you to fly a Red Bull Air Race plane at 50 foot off the ground, 200 miles an hour. Yeah, we could do that. No one's used VR and AR to launch a car before. Oh yeah, I could probably make you one of those, and we will do that in Los Angeles, and Jaguar will launch their electric. So we're a lot of that sort of what's new, what's shiny, what's difficult, and kind of we've got known as the company to go to if you wanted to try and create new content to talk to new audiences.
But this was at the sort of, obviously you have a background in real time from the early days, right? So you've been thinking about real time in the gaming world and all of those things.
When it was hard.
To you, it was when it was hard. But so to you, this VR thing was a little bit more, it was natural. It was a very natural thing for you to consider. But this was in the early days, right? This is also in the days when people were like, we can do everything in VR. We can do lots of, there was lots. Yeah. So what was your motivation there? What did you see as a driving force behind that?
Well, yeah, there was the challenge. Everyone was running into it very headlong. There was a lot of PR and marketing people who wanted a world's first insert VR or AR, whatever, and then insert brand or product or whatever. And it was just to generate free marketing. They wanted an Engadget story, a Gizmodo, a Verge, or whatever else. And they didn't really care about the quality of the content because, you know what? A couple hundred people might see it at a weekend. And our challenge was always to build, to take the money from a company like that, but generate quality content that we knew was pushing the medium forward. So the storytelling techniques were being and the R&D techniques we required, and the reach was being required, and all the stuff where people came out of it and went, oh, my mind was changed, or my mind was blown, or I can't wait to do another one of those. Instead of, oh, that was awful. Why do I bother putting my head into that? I feel a bit queasy or sick or anything else. So I was always fighting for quality of content for the audience more than anything else. And I think that just comes from a drive that knew that for me, VR is, the first truly new medium that we have seen in a very long time. We've seen many adaptations, but each of them, comes along and it leans on the past. But when every type of storytelling and types of communication to this point has required, on the whole, someone's imagination or the mind's eye to see another world, another universe, or imagine another world, another universe. So from books to plays to radio to television, you want suspension of disbelief for a little while to lose yourself in the story. And even with a static still, if you're looking at a visualization of a new tower block or whatever, the best teams tell stories through a single image, through photography. But I have to have an asset in there, or a person or a tree or whatever, to make me understand size and scale and blah, 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 blah. But it's all in your head. Whereas VR is, I'm going to show you something and you're going to think it's real. And even if it's super shiny or low polygon or anything else, your mind's eye isn't kind of making this up anymore. You are seeing it. And for me, that was absolutely evolutionary or revolutionary for where we could go to tell stories in new ways. Closest thing is immersive theater, or reality. You step out into the street and what you see around you go like, oh, this is what it looks like. I don't have to pretend or imagine it or understand how to look at plans or drawings. This is real. And so I knew that from that little glimpse that I wanted us to be a driving force within that space. And I wanted to create worlds and universes and tell stories that are worth people's time. Personally, I think that, talk about it a little bit more, but I think time is the only thing of value at all. Everything else is a construct by humanity and society to make us think things are valuable. But we have a finite amount of minutes on the planet, and we don't know how many we're going to get roughly. So if I'm going to exchange my time for something, it has to be really worthwhile, because everything else is a waste of time. I might exchange time for work. I might exchange time for a movie, or I might exchange time for a game or a conversation with you. But I've got to be okay with the fact that minute has now gone, and there's so much content and stuff out there which is just awful, and people are losing. It just is badly made, badly put together, badly thought out, and isn't worth someone's time. And I think we need to be more clear about making sure the stuff we make is valuable and useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that I'm really curious about is obviously you've gotten a lot of attention with some of your the VR work you've done, and from the early days of what you were doing. This is back when anything and everyone was trying everything in VR, and there was a big marketing push, as you mentioned. Someone wanted to do something in Engadget, someone wanted to do something in Verge, just to show off something in VR. And as you said, there was a lot of crap that came out of that too. There was a lot of stuff that was like, what's the point of this? What is this? But obviously the through that trial and error time, people have tried a bunch of other things. Yeah. So I'm curious to know what have you tried? Like, what are the things that has driven you, and what have you learned during these last 10 years of what VR has meant and what has been able to be possible out of it?
Yeah, it's tricky. There's the personal wants and desires. I mean, you go into anything, it's like the thing that makes you happy may not be the thing that makes you money, nor may no one else in the world might be interested in. Luckily, the internet kind of brings disparate groups, and you can make content for one person. There's probably another couple other people out there in the world that like the same thing as you do. But when you're trying to push a new medium, a new platform, which has a new technology stack, as Oculus was, and then Facebook bought them, you need to make content which has mass appeal and is valuable and worthwhile. So if you look at some of the stuff now on the Quest 2 and some of the content on that, I think it's truly excellent. I think the quality of it is good. I think the deliverable through that device is good, and I think it's worth the money. I think the developers are actually generating money from it. I mean, the big ones on that at the moment, for me, any of the Vader Immortal stuff. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so becoming part of, entering the Star Wars universe and playing out a part within it, I think is absolutely amazing. Right. On the arcade game side, I think that any of the classics of Beat Saber or Super Hot show you what the idea is. If you're going ethereal, going beyond your own representation and anything else. The thing that I think is most interesting is when you go past creating linear content for individuals and you just start bringing humans together, and humans will create their own stories in an empty space. If you have one human and a table and a block on it, nothing will happen. If you put another human on the other side of it, I'll pick it up and I'll throw it to you. And then I'll say, how far can you throw it? And can you catch it? Can you juggle it? And whatever else it is. So only the multiplayer, multi-user worlds that are being crafted, for me, are showing us an evolutionary step forward about how we communicate across borders. So Facebook Horizons is a glimpse of that universe. We've had glimpses of it in the past. If you look at any of the early, why can't I think of the name of it? The massive multiplayer, it's still running now. It'll come back. Okay. Any of the previous technologies that allowed multiplayers to kind of come together, build their own worlds and their universes, were all desktop, and they didn't have any virtual reality, which meant you weren't really anything else. You were just representing yourself as an avatar. Whereas the quality of my avatar in Facebook Horizons and how we can meet and have this conversation is impactful, is meaningful, does build memories in a way that feels like I was truly present and truly there. And I think the turning of those dials up at the moment, I think, is most interesting, where we were already going in that direction anyway. The forcing function of the acceleration of the pandemic has made us all, reassess how we live, work, play, and how we access technology. And this idea that a video screen for you and I is enough to have we're happy having a conversation like this. We feel present, but it's definitely clunky in comparison that if we were sitting across a table from each other. The nuances are lost. So if we now see where Horizons are going, or Spatial IO is going, or Rec Room is going, or Roblox is going, or Fortnite is going, bringing people together to have meaningful engagement in these platforms beyond games, I think is the thing that gets me really excited about where the technology is going and shows us kind of a step forward, because the time we waste on commuting, I think, is absolutely, sinful. The time we waste going to the other side of the planet on an aeroplane is a waste of it. But if I can represent the office, the football field, the cinema, my kids' school, and I can create universes which bring people together to communicate better, I think that's where we're going to make some good headway. And that's actually what a lot of our work has been laying the foundations for, allowing us to create content experiences within that space.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think we've all come to realize certain parts based on the pandemic, that some of the downfalls or the things that opportunities, right? So, like I spend, just as you mentioned, before this, I used to spend about 2.5 hours a day in traffic, right? Which was a little ridiculous. It was I caught up on podcasts, which was good, and I did a bunch of other things. But generally speaking, it was a treacherous slog of an event, right? That happened. So I didn't necessarily find it very useful. But I do find that, like, hey, I have a lot more time in my day, and that's two things. One, to be a little more focused, and then also have more time with my family, and also I find that there's less stress when I start my day. I start my day relaxed because I just woke up and I'm fine, as opposed to having fight traffic and everything else. So I definitely see what you mean by that. But there's something interesting also about, what you're really talking about is what the metaverse is going to mean beyond games, right? And I think that's an important part of what we're going to start to look at. But I think what's interesting. Go ahead.
We're seeing glimpses of it. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing little shards or little ideas coming to fruition that we can tangibly touch or engage with. But we are, as everyone says, we're at the beginning of this process to find out where it's all going to end up. But I think we're finding point use cases which are opening up to other kind of use cases and opportunities to kind of connect. The VR one is going to be a big, straightforward step. Replace your reality with another reality. Replace this reality with another place that we can all go to, be it a digital twin of it, be it designed by some architect who doesn't have to worry about the laws of physics, be it from a movie set, be it my office. But we'll go there and we'll be in another place, and it replaces this world around us. And I think that's pretty phenomenal. Because a lot of us don't have, the £1 million mansions and everything else they might want to hit the world. So let's replace the world we have with a world we want. The other one is that that's the teleportation thing. For me, though, it's a stepping stone to mixed reality. It's a stepping stone to have a always on represented digital layer within my universe. So not a replacement. I'm going to bring you as a set of polygons represented sitting across the desk from me to have our conversation, and vice versa through the glasses that I wear, an AR layer to put you and I into the same space. Instead of a digital construct, it's my house and it's your house. We're together. And then once you go to that point, every part of my day will have this digital layer as part of it, from meetings and conversations to replacing the laptop to digital artwork to replacing the idea of having a TV in your front room is redundant. They're not going to be able to sell me a black box, which is physical hardware, because my glasses can put as many black boxes in on any surface of any size, of any resolution. So the days of Samsung, LG, Sony, whoever else selling us TVs is numbered. They're all going to get to sell us glasses, but that's those ideas of those use cases are what we're talking about is apps and experiences and software that live within a mixed reality. And I think that anyone at the moment who's rallying around it are going, changes everything. The richness of the internet is going to become physical and spatial. And then all the ideas of these physical lumps of silicon in our homes are going to be cloud-based, and we're just going to have a front end to them here. And so we all know that this wave is building of the metaverse, but the crash isn't around VR. The crash is around mixed reality, about the glasses that we wear all day, every day.
Yes. But I think there's something that's missing a little bit. And the thing that I think is missing, and I can't quite always put my finger on it, but I always got upset about it. And you mentioned a little bit in the architecture world, and this is something that has happened before that I've been discussing for a while. Why do we need to have a couch in VR? I mean, it's just, or a coffee table in VR. You know what I mean? There is a something about that it's like you've already liberated yourself from the reality. Why do you insist on putting things that are necessary for that to be there, right? And then also, why do you design the ugliest piece of architecture imaginable to be in, as opposed to actually have real architects? That's the thing, right? It's like, or you're not an architect. And the thing is, this world needs design and needs aesthetics and needs beauty. And the people that are good at doing that are not always contributing to that process. And I find that to be sad and a missed opportunity. And so if you look at a company like Facebook, why isn't Facebook hiring some of the best architects in the world to design the metaverse or even Epic at that point,
Totally. I absolutely agree. I've done many kind of closed door conversations, consultations with big architectural firms, big engineering firms, big real estate companies looking at the future of their industry. And is it going to go digital? Is it going to go hybrid? How is it going to affect our housing, where people live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And my push for those people is always to say, well, if you can create a physical building, you should be creating a digital twin of it immediately. So there should always be the ability to inhabit this space from anywhere in the world, because you already have the CAD. You just need to touch it up, get it ready, so I can come and visit it.
Sure.
And it's all geo-locked and anything else. But then how are you going to compete, and how are you going to take your architecture into places that don't have a physical build, when you can say all of my learnings that understood that I had to build something which was a certain way to allow it to be constructed, be safe, be anything else, have fire exits, yada, yada, yada. You can let those shackles off and let people play with architecture, which is unbounded by the laws of physics. And they go, well, who's going to want that? I said, well, if you think about the idea of director avatar being a consumer-driven way of selling clothes now, you can buy Gucci clothes for your avatar. It never gets cloth cut. It never gets pattern printed. It never gets shipped somewhere. It never gets put on a hanger, but it's on your representation of yourself. The architectural world is going to have to go in the same way. The challenge at the moment is that a $100 million building is worth a lot to them to do. At the minute, there isn't a big enough market for those architects to start designing, creating completely synthetic buildings without someone putting some money down, because it's a very different model. But I absolutely agree. We should be having architects doing it in the world. And then the other thing is they've got to tear up so many of their rule books, because they've learned to create buildings that have humans moving around them who are a certain size and a certain speed and require lifts and things that we'd expect. And you asked about coffee tables and chairs and all the boring stuff in that we don't need in VR. We need, or in the metaverse, we need them as a stepping stone. We need them as a reality trope. We need them as the ability for us to understand space, because for us, our generation and the generations we have around them, the only way we can understand the world we're stepping into is with that. But digital natives and those that are born and have greater access to technology become less dependent on old ways of thinking, old ways of being. Even myself, I've got identical twin boys at 2.5. The world is built for them. It's not for me. I'm on the way out. And so the idea that I'm going to control the world that they're going to step into, they are going to be completely digital native across all platforms. The idea that I have to physically go somewhere to go and meet someone. I mean, even now it's kind of being torn up, but for them, they're just going to go, I'll just go into my whatever platform and I'll meet them, or they'll come to me and we'll play in the back garden.
That's true. And that does not, I think, our kids' generation is going to have a very different future. And I think it's very interesting. Like, there's not necessarily a need for them to learn how to drive because self-driving cars, right? There's not necessarily a thing going on where you need to even buy a car because, again, self-driving cars, and then you just get to go someplace, you go someplace, you're done, and that changes a bunch of aspects of what we think is common or would never go away, and people are going to have a hard time giving that up, just in the same way that people are having a hard time giving up a gas powered car. They're going to have a hard time giving that up because that's familiar. Not only is it familiar, it is part of their culture, right? It is part of their history. It's what they do. And I fix cars for a living. I was like, well, you may not need to do that anymore. And that's,
I agree.
So it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. But there's a lot of exciting things. And I think you've always sort of, I've been looking through a lot of the stuff that you guys do at Rewind, and you guys do touch on a bunch of things that are part of the familiar and very much part of the future, right? Because it's like, here's what the familiar is going to become in some ways, and here's what it's going to, what that looks like. And one of the things that you guys explored is games and what sports in that way. So why don't you? And I know you've done a little bit. You've talked a little bit about that at the Real Time Conference and places like that. So give me a little bit of that flavor of we've talked about the architecture thing, which I'm really excited about, and I can go on forever. But I want to talk a little bit about sports and about esports and what that means.
Every time I try and leave the architecture industry, it keeps dragging me back in. Like every time I think I'm done talking about someone's CAD model, someone's BIM, someone's whatever, I get handed and here's the next project. We've just got the whole thing. It's a small city. Can you just run it in Unreal? No,
right, of course.
No, not yet. But we'll work on that with you to make that accessible. Yep. But but it's the way people design the world around us, and so it's always going to be there. Humanity now designs everything in a computer first. Well, then it lives in a computer. Then you can get someone to physically make it or 3D print it, or you can keep it digital and it'll stay there. But sports is really interesting. So sports really, for us, leans into live events. And live events is music performance. Even shopping centers are live event spaces. They just have the ability that the experience is buying and selling things. But sports is really interesting because we have generated, we have a lot of different sporting events. And for humanity, we love risk. We love stories with risk involved. And for pretty much most of the stories we tell, there's no risk involved. We try and create danger and whatever else. But if you watch a movie, you know how the arc's going to go, and they're almost going to die, and then everything's fine at the end, because that's what makes most people happy about it. But with sport, we don't know who's going to win. We think we know who's going to win, but the drama of that, it feeds the human spirit. It's the same as like when we used to go to war, we did battle the village next door, but we replaced battling with kicking a football around or throwing things to each other. We have our gladiators, which are now, tennis players or anything else. And so there's something really visceral about sport, which I think is phenomenal. But when we watch sport currently or consume sport currently, 99% of us are consuming it through a frame directed by a director who has camera angles, who are trying to tell us a story through the shots. So they're telling us in a medium which is about a linear medium, but it's very good. We can have close-ups, we can have far away, we've added slow-mo, there's some volumetric ways of being able to move the camera around, which is pretty awesome. But all of it is curtailed into a way, or told to us in a way, which is one size fits all. So you may be able to watch it with a different commentator. That might be interesting. But normally it's one stream that comes out, and that's how you watch it. If you go to a sporting event, though, it's kind of interesting that it's not that great. You watch the big screen more than you watch the players on the field, or you talk to your friend next to you sociably. It is amazing to be there, but you're still engaged with it in a way that's offhand. And the flip of it happens for the people on at home. And again, as we know through the pandemic, a game without fans in the stands, a game without the audio of the crowd cueing you for the excitement, which is the same way as you're cued to laugh in a rom-com or like a Friends or anything else, it falls on its face. So they need fans in the stand to build excitement for the home viewers. And a couple of sports have told me that directly. So we can generate fake fans, and that was anything else. So if in the stadium is okay, but not amazing, at home is one size fits all, we have the ability now with technology to do a hybrid, a new way to engage with sport and to tell unique individual stories in different ways. And where the challenger is esports. So esports has come out of, in quotes, nowhere. It hasn't, but 400 or 500 million people yearly engaging with esports, which requires very little athletic prowess. You just have to be a smart person with access to technology and some good reaction times, and anybody can be a player, which is where most of the grassroots sports came on. But also the tournaments are funded by the audience. League of Legends final, half the money comes from people donating money for loot boxes. So the engagement, the excitement, the digital first way people engage with it. And then the platforms that connect with it are Twitch, with 100 different streamers giving you their story they want to tell you. So that transition of esports is having an impact on traditional sports, where there's a mismatch, but an understanding that this demographic is either going to transition to normal sport, and sport needs to transition up, or they're not gonna. And this will just fade out with the aging demographic who care less and less about NFL, soccer, Formula One, or anything else. So there's a burning platform. And what we can do with VR and AR, and mixed reality and artificial intelligence and lots of digital verse things, that we can put them in a melting pot to reimagine new ways to get to audiences, to excite them, to allow them to feel present. One of the most straightforward one is, in this time, is just a digital sports bar. So the ability for me to bring 2D content in, to lay out a mini version of the entire field right in front of us, and to have my 5 or 6 best friends feeling present, like we had the best corporate box, the best view in the house, the best commentator in the room, and we were enjoying this together, without needing to travel 2 hours or spend $1,000 on a ticket, or. I think is a pretty impactful thing that's happening. The other one, which is our Weaver platform, which I talked about at Real Time Conference, is we have a platform to look at an AI platform that looks at the last 5,000 games of Dota, and then drives an a narrative engine off the back of that. So it's watching the current game, knows the last 5,000 games, and tells you, hey, so I know you're really into this team. That player has never done anything like this before. It's going to be really exciting how it's going to end up. He might die, he might win. And it draws attention to me because I know it knows me and how I play, and it's talking to me. At the moment, it's working in text, but we're plugging it into an audio engine. It can talk to me in its voice. Plugging it into MetaHumans is represented as an avatar, which looks however I want it to look. And so suddenly I have a commentator that's talking to me, and it's like, imagine you had your favorite coach or your favorite player or the most knowledgeable person in the game who talks to you and tells you about the stuff and gets you really excited about what you're playing. So we're turning that for esports first, because it's an incredibly rich data set, untapped place, and the demographics moving through. But we're going to be able to apply that onto traditional sports as well. And the interesting bit is where that clash and where that evolution happens. In fact, I'm doing a talk at COGX this year on what the Olympics in 10 years is going to look like. Not only from fan engagement, but sports. They announced that they're doing some digital esports as part of this Olympics, off to one side, but they know, just the same as the Olympics before brought BMX in 2 years' time, there's going to be esport. Maybe it'll be Fortnite, maybe it'll be Dota, maybe it'll be something we don't know about yet.
But I think this is going to, obviously this is going to upset a bunch of people, right? I mean, this is going to be disruptive in a lot of ways.
Why people are upset.
The people in the sporting are used to people paying thousands of dollars for a front row, like near the benches position at an NBA game. They want people to pay top dollar for that. And now they're like, anyone can be at that you can have 1,000 people in that one seat.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the prime seat, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that people used to pay a premium for, and now people aren't going to pay a premium for.
It's true, but you've got to think, why are people upset, and who are the people that are upset? And there's different ways of looking at it.
There's an exclusivity to it that people want.
And that, again, is one of I go back to the thing about time. Humanity respects and values scarcity. Gold's scarce, it's worth something. There's only one Mona Lisa, it's worth something. There's only 10 of these seats, they're worth something. They're worth something to people that need them to be bartered against, to be seen on the front row or whatever else, or I'm wealthy enough or whatever it is. Going back to that time thing, if we can get past some of these constructs into what else is valuable, spending time with my friends, enjoying something we like watching together and not being worried whether we're seen or not is valuable to me. But the business models are the challenge. The business model of sport is tickets, live events, same thing. People in a space paying money, food and beverage sales, paying money, licensing deal, paying money, global licensing deal, paying money. New way in, they've already got the rights. You can't have this. You can't show that game in that way because Sky own it or AT&T own it or anything else. But you can get a digital platform which allows me to pay directly to you. So being in the UK, I pay $100 a year to the NFL, directly to the NFL, to watch all of the NFL games, other than a couple that are licensed in the UK. But that's not to whoever has the licensing rights for sports games in the US. And that's because they don't really care about the UK at the minute. But at some point, all of those ideas that we saw sweeping through software, where it was, ownership, then it was subscription, and it's sometimes going to go to use. Those models are going to sweep over sport, where I'm going to pay Manchester United, the team, direct access because I want to watch them and I want them to get all my money, and they're going to allow me to access their content in a different way. So we got to see that the pressures on all these sports, which are old ways of thinking, of heritage ways, and people holding on to them because they're squeezing money out, are gonna have to change. I mean, we've seen that a couple of times recently where they've been creaking into going, well, I better pay attention because of this, or a super league's forming or anything else. But going back to the ticketing thing, so those 10 seats, basketball game, They're very
Right.
expensive. There will still be people that want to go to those physical ones, and they'll still be really valuable. Same as any sort of, music event or anything. But if I can make you, so those tickets are $1,000 a ticket. I can make a
Right.
copy of that seat, which is virtually accessible, that an infinite number of people could go to. But let's say it's a million. We'll cap it if we have to. But I can sell them for $10 a ticket. I can get a million
Right.
people to do $10 a ticket instead of your 1,000. Although
Right.
the number changes, and yes, it's a different thing, but once you go to software scale connecting to live events and you're accessing consumers that want to pay you directly for those tickets, the model is so open and so much better because I'm paying for access, not by Burger King to allow me to have sponsored access or someone to control it. I think there's a real flip coming about actually consumers paying for the content directly. Even subscription models muddies the water. My $7.99 and I get as much as I can eat through Netflix.
Right.
I would rather pay 50 cents for each thing that I watch instead of all the things I don't watch.
Right. Well, that's always been the model, right? That's been the thing where people have been complaining about it in the cable, at least in the United States, in the cable industry, right? The cable industry has always been like, well, you're paying $120 or $150 for cable, and you're getting like 500 channels, but like 495 of them are crap or things you're not interested in, right? And then and you're paying, like, let's say you're not into sports, 40% of your bill goes to ESPN, which you don't watch. Right. So why are you paying that? And that's the thing, when suddenly people started saying, oh, I'm going to get a lot of great content out of Netflix or whatever, and I can choose what I want to do or see. That's when cable cutting started to happen. But if you're saying it's just like, not only you're going to cut it down even more, like I only are interested in these things on Netflix or these things on Disney Plus.
I think it's coming, and I think it's a natural progression where we can get more and more individual, more and more targeted to the fans. Case in point, pixel streaming technology is phenomenal because it takes away the required for hardware here. I can give you a link and you have full access to a full powered GPU box in the cloud, and I can create a phenomenal experience for you. It's fully interactive, fully real time, multi-user, pick your platform, AR, VR, desktop, I don't give a damn. But it costs us $1 an hour, maybe $4 an hour.
Right.
That doesn't work unless the consumer is actually paying something for access. Because whoever is at the other end says, oh yeah, I want 1 million people to log in. I'm like, well, that's $1 million an hour for you to talk to those people. Oh, but the internet's for free. I'm like, well, the internet for streaming video can be for free, but this isn't.
Yeah.
This is something different. This is interactive, active, participatory content, changing every person's view on the world.
Yep.
But if we have a fan base, say we worked with Madison Beer. So Madison Beer is an American pop star, and we helped do the immersive concert for her for Verizon's keynote, and it's part of Sony's immersive new studio. But the principle being, she's got 26 million followers on Instagram. If she tweets out a link to those on her account, let's say she only gets 1% of them kind of following through. And from that 1%, they spend $10. That's millions of dollars. Millions of dollars from that area. It pays for the content, pays for access, whatever. Maybe it's 10%. What if she got half of them? What if she got 13 million people to do something and be actively engaged? Once you have a following, it doesn't matter where they are globally, they have access to it. And that's the scale that software gets you. It's not the scale which a linear broadcast through a cable network gets you. It's not even the same scale that you get through Netflix, which is a subscription model, and people may log in. They might be interested in whatever. The user, there's good numbers on people watching stuff, but like the highest is 56 million. Because we're not targeting down to exactly what a small demographic want, making content for them. And that's where sport has that very special thing, and live events has it. We have fans, diehard fans that have loved this team for all time, or loved this artist for her entire career, and they want to engage. and you know, we all want to be on that front bench row. We all want to have a backstage pass. And through
Right.
immersive, we can give people those sorts of experiences at scale where we have a touch of those sorts of things.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, I've seen live, live Fortnite events, which are pretty interesting. Right. And those, like the Travis Scott thing was pretty cool.
Did you go?
I did.
Good. Well,
I was with my son. My son loves Fortnite, and he was like, "Well, there's this big Travis Scott." He didn't even really know who Travis Scott was because he's a little young, right? Which is fine. And he were like, "This was a ridiculous experience," and it wasn't even VR. It was like we're just looking at it on our TV, but you're interacting with it. You are part of that experience, and it becomes a completely cool thing. And listen, people go to concerts, and some concerts are amazing. But you've never been to a concert where you're jumping through the air with a zero gravity and flipping around and seeing everything happen around you. And you're like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And it's so much fun to do that. And that's an experience that's not possible. But then at the same time, they'll do a Chris Nolan event on Fortnite, and you're just looking at a big screen, and it's not necessarily like that doesn't fit. That's the couch in the living room again. You know what I mean?
But the Star Wars one was pretty cool. So they managed to, you're out there. They did play the trailer as a 2D element, but you're there, and the Millennium Falcon buzzes you guys and flies around. There's a bunch of it lands in front of you, and it's. So yeah, you can use the medium in either way. I utterly agree. Just playing it out isn't as good. With the Travis Scott stuff, it was a Rolling Stone journalist who just had an awful time. He's like, I normally go to bars and gigs, get drunk at the back, watch a cool band, talk to my friends, go home, write it up. This, I didn't get the technology, I didn't go on a thing, I didn't know what I was supposed to look at, whatever else. And do you know what? It's because it's not for him. It's not for
it's not for him.
It's not for his demographic and the things that he likes. And that's, I mean, that's it's a bigger clash than anything else, is that the evolution, the pressure through technology change that used to happen to humanity used to be generations, hundreds of years for a new piece of a new idea to spread across the planet and be adopted and to have an impact on a society. Now you can come up with an idea in the morning, run it up in whatever bit of software you want, get it online, tweet to the world, and the entire world could pick something up and change and start using it within a day. And so, but that impact means that every time we try and set routes over how we're going to run a business or how we're going to run a community, there's always pressures of sloshing around about how the whole thing could be changed within a heartbeat. And it's really hard to set down routes. So we've got to be able to adapt and change. Sadly, as we get older, our ability to change to new things gets less and less possible. That's why, my father-in-law is very specific of the things he likes. He's open to listening to other things, but he likes them his way. I'm getting a little bit more set in my ways. I need somebody under 25 to operate some of the kit we have because it's just a little out of my reach.
Right.
But and my kids are going to be having the same thing, but that sweep through. So we need to understand that there's different demographics in our society, different audiences in our society, and we need to be able to deliver them. And I think, going back a step to what we're all talking about, is that practically we're at a really interesting point for the technology where we're getting one unified core asset pipeline that's standing up and can be robust enough to generate different kinds of experiences and content from it. That tool chain of the software, the 3D assets and the CAD that comes in at the bottom goes up, becomes optimized, comes out into virtual production for a linear film, comes out into television for a short form, comes out into PlayStation 4 for an interactive, comes out as a mobile game, comes out into augmented reality, comes out into the story world, and the characters, the line through the middle stays. And then depending on how we want to interact with the world, it comes out in different directions. And Star Wars is the best at that currently, of holding the lore of the story, allowing it to be a cartoon for kids and a VR game for headsets, great feature films, TV series, you name it, all coming off this one core world that they've built. And I think more of that stuff, let alone that the story was there, but it's the same. It can be the same asset that kind of comes through it. If you look at what happened with Epic's new MetaHumans technology, which is a incredibly accurate, well-rigged, in quotes, photorealistic digital human, digital puppet, it has 10 levels of detail that it spits out along with it. So not only can you get the super high quality ray trace one, but you get the not quite high quality one, which works on desktop or on mobile or on PlayStation 1. There is a really awful, crappy, 100 poly version of the character. But it's understanding there are so many different ways to interact with it. And same as all of the people in architecture, same as people in visual effects. We've always had these disparate 3D pipelines, and they are just like the stars are aligning under one asset pipeline where the tools actually talk to each other.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think there's definitely going to be some interesting process that goes on and how people use the tools. And I also think it's a mentality, right? I mean, I've made this comment many times where people are like, I don't understand why someone would watch someone else play video games. It's like, well, you're watching someone else play basketball, so I don't see what the difference is. Really. Why aren't you playing basketball? And it's like this because you're not as good as them, and that person that's playing that video game is more skilled than I am, and I want to see what it's like to play that game with skill, as opposed to me getting frustrated and wanting to flip my desk all the time. So there is something to be said about that process, and I think it's very interesting. But I also think that this does change the medium, right? If you look at Deloitte and Touche's research recently about what generations are interested in, and you look at the current, the new the Gen Ys and right now, it's like their interest is games. And movies content is way down the list. They're actually not as interested in movie content. And I think that, the Hollywood mentality is going to have to change for that to happen. Yeah. And I think that the gaming industry is going to be a platform for which content and story is going to take place in a lot of ways.
But also, as going to back a step, it's about delivering different ways into those story worlds. So for some of us, on Sunday I want to watch James Bond, but on Monday I want to be James Bond. And you you could, with VR or a PlayStation title, I can participate in a world, drive a story, be wearing the persona of James Bond on a Monday. But on Sunday, I want a director who knows how to craft the frame to tell me a story, and I want to be lean back because I'm in a different mode, a different energy. And even with the kids coming with being really interested in esports, it's the same thing. Sometimes they want to play the game, sometimes they want to watch someone else play the game, sometimes they want to watch it behind the scenes, sometimes it's the same levels of different types of content, of access. But I think what has really changed for the demographic coming through compared to the traditional sports is that they're active all the time, whether either watching a linear piece or not. They are engaged on Twitch, talking to their friends. They're part of a community. It's always on. It's on demand. It's multi-user, cross-platform across wherever they want to be at any time, and they're part of it. They're engaged with it. And even if you go to an esports tournament, it's like going to a convention. It's not like going to a football match where it's my team against your team. It's a celebration of everything to do with the sport that they love, and there's a game that's happening at the front of it. It hasn't got to a point where it's like one or the other, and it hasn't got that kind of some of the tropes that traditional sports have, which I don't like, that are hopefully are going to fade away. But I think it's more interesting how that, and even in a linear film, we talk about a movie, kids, they don't want an hour and a half or 2 hours of this. They want a bit of this and then a little bit of that and a bit of this and a bit of that, and then come back to it. Like, they're always moving between different modes of communication, operation, understanding, entertainment. And so you need the ability to flick those different modes. Yes.
But what you're really talking about here is an interesting point of view and this is a key to VR, is third person narrative versus first person experience, right? And that is something that's important. And especially when you're talking about like esports, basically esports removes yourself from the narrative, but you're watching it happen. And that engagement is very important. I think a lot of people think that third person is lesser, but it can be more in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. It's an easier role to play. How many,
right.
I love immersive theater. The reason I love immersive theatre is that I'm an extrovert. I like people. I like pretend. I probably should have been on theatre on stage at some point. Haven't, but I feel like that's a missed calling. And so immersive theatre lets me pretend to be a character, and that's something that I enjoy. Other people, the idea of being asked, stand out in front of people, be seen, or have to pretend, it's so alien to them. It's uncomfortable. And so when you are third person, there's a character in front. It looks like a pirate. Okay, well, I can do piratey things. That's what pirates do. I understand what a pirate does. I don't have to pretend because it's not actually me in the same way. But when you go first person, even though it's the same game, the same title, because you don't have that ability to see, pirate hat, pirate coat, pirate things, whatever else, and I'm watching it from afar, it's far more visceral that it's you. And someone looks you in the eye and says, "What do you want to do?" It's far more uncomfortable to a whole bunch of people. It makes it really, really difficult to engage with. That's why I don't know if you've tried the Void. You've probably done the Voids, haven't you? So they had a really good Star Wars experience, and you all go in, and there's 4 of you, and you're all stormtroopers, and you have to kind of battle your way through it. And what they asked you to be was yourself, who just happened to be put into a stormtrooper outfit. They're not saying you are one. You are can you pretend to be one and sneak through this? So no one had to be anyone else than themselves hiding in an outfit. And that took away a lot of you
became a fish out of water. Like that's part of the story is you are a fish out of water, right? Yeah.
And they use that as a really good way of allowing people to engage where there was huge numbers of people that wouldn't when they were told you are Boba Fett. I'm not Boba Fett. I don't know how to pretend to be him. Some people do, some people don't. You're just a stormtrooper. You are yourself. You're trying to sneak through this. And they did some really good work there. The other thing I kind of like from that, just on a side note, was I saw one of their talks, and there's a bit when you're going down in the lift and the box open next to you and all the guns are there, and everyone's asked to go and pick one up. And at some point, one of you will shoot the gun. Probably at your friend. It just will. You'll shoot the gun. An alarm goes off, smoke comes out, you have to bust out of the lift. And it's this real bit like, why did you shoot? Oh, yeah. And they built that as a story point because it's like brings the team together and gives you something to talk about afterwards of something ridiculous that happened. And I said, well, what happens if no one shoots each other? Surely the plot point disappears. He said, well, we just make one of the guns go off. And
by accident.
By accident, which means
but quote unquote by accident,
Well, I did it. It went off in my hand, and you get the same story point out of humans all interacting, but they just manipulate that story point because so much of that experience is about the 4 of you doing something together as a group and being able to talk about it afterwards. And I think it's really interesting that when you are present and yourself with some other people, the guiding of that experience through it. You can put guardrails up, which is really powerful. And some of the best stories in VR have those points where you feel like I'm the first person ever to go down this way and do this thing, and I've done it all on my own volition. No, I'm a completely free spirit. But really, they've just been, putting walls up, nudging you this way, setting the thing up. It's all kind of psychology and psychologic tricks, but it makes it so much more impactful for you when you get to the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Now, listen, I know you're sensitive on time, and I want to make sure you have plenty of opportunity to talk a little bit about Rewind and some of the things you guys are doing. So, can you give people a little bit of an idea of what's going on right now, and some of the things to look forward to, and what's going on exactly?
Yeah, so we've been really lucky. We've been growing for 10 years, and we have a good sized studio. There's about 50 of us now. And we're hiring. That's probably the best thing I'm trying to say. We're looking for really always hiring. And as of this year, we've pulled the trigger to fully flexible working environment. So people can work full time in the office, part time in the office, or no time in the office. So we've just hired a bunch of people in Scotland, and which means we can also work with people remotely all over the world. We're just looking for some of the best talent. We're an Unreal Engine first studio. We do obviously work with Unity and all other platforms, but we're looking for really talented Unreal Engine people, and also anyone who's deep kind of C++ would be a valuable asset. We're an engineering heavy studio at the minute, making large experiences. And so within the company, we've kind of reimagined ourselves. We've taken the best people from the games industry and given them a blank canvas to say, well, let's leave the old world behind. But those tools, those real-time tools, are going to be what's driving our future and driving the type of content we're doing. So in the middle of the studio, there's obviously still some really good quality work for hire projects. We have some big studios coming in. We've got a couple of tech companies coming in, and they're asking us to create stories and experiences that can hopefully get reach. And as VR is beginning to gather pace, that's really cool. But as I said earlier, our experiences are also going to live as pixel streamed experiences, meaning that we can get the highest quality, fully active stories told to anybody in the world on any device. And that, I think, is a phenomenal change in mentality of the type of work we're doing. Last year, we created a project for NBC and Universal using Holoride's technology, who actually just raised their Series A, which we're really proud about. The idea of putting a virtual reality headset on, being in the back of a vehicle, and I can change the world around you whilst you drive. So you can be back.
That's kind of scary.
Well, if your car is if it can drive itself, absolutely. At the moment, it's backseat mainly. But when we're all passengers, the idea of what do you want to do on your journey can be replaced. So the technology allows us to create, you can drive around historically through dinosaurs or back in time or in the future or fight aliens or be at work early if you wanted to. Because we're matching the headset motion with the car, it's a one-to-one match, perfect fit. Takes away any idea of nausea and gives us an open platform to create cool stuff. We then hook into map data and we can create, worlds that are procedurally generated from the street you're driving down. So the lamppost becomes a monster, or the stoplight becomes a chasm of a bridge, or any buildings become X or Y, or whatever you want it to be. So we're generating these games and experiences off the back of that technology. That means as we drive around, maybe less these days, but when we do, we have a world that we want to show people. And that's been really exciting. So the proof point was last year, we spoke about it at South by Southwest, was a Bride of Frankenstein experience for NBC. So we had 10 cars from Ford. We had them at Universal Theme Park as a test bed more than anything else. You get in the car, put the headset on, you and your friend, and suddenly you're transported to kind of a 1920s / America / Transylvania world. And the Bride of Frankenstein jumps in the car with you. And she's like, get me the hell out of here. And the car drives off. And the driver takes you out of the parking lot, out onto the freeway, out to the public streets, and then back in again. And the story is that she's being chased by Dracula's ghouls because she's stolen Frankenstein's heart and she's going to replace it. And you have to help her on her journey and her experience. And it's proved out what we could do is that with that experience, because it's all running in real time, you and your friend are participating, what if the Uber that picks you up to take you to the cinema, part of the movie is in the car on the way to the film? What if you get in a car and you'll get your Uber or your driverless car is taking you to the next baseball game or NFL game, and during the journey you've got the coach sitting in the front seat telling you about the history of the team or what he's going to do today or whatever else it's going to be. So you can have these moments of experience of entertainment which were completely lost to traffic, completely lost to wasted time, where we can enhance the experience and extend the experience. Or maybe you're in a car back from seeing your favorite pop star, and you know what, he's going to do an encore with you and carpool karaoke on the car on the way home. Like, we can give you these really good flavors of it. And it's such a new platform that we're really enjoying experimenting into this space, because Holoride now is going to be coming to most major car manufacturers over the next 2 years, which means anyone with a headset has an enabled vehicle.
That's pretty That's pretty substantial,
Yeah, small thing.
and really cool.
Yeah, we're excited
Yeah,
about
that's
it.
not a small thing. That's not a small thing. That's pretty awesome. Well, listen, so I really appreciate it. People should definitely follow you and follow your company and see all the cool things you guys are doing. So obviously your site is rewind.co. That's your company site. But what are other places that people can follow you and good platforms to check out some of the cool stuff you guys are doing?
We've been running the virtual reality London, so VRLO, and we upgraded it to XRLO last year because A, it needs to be broader than virtual reality, and B, we couldn't be physical anymore, and we moved it to medium. So xrlo.co, or just XRLO on Google. You'll find not only a whole bunch of really interesting kind of videos and podcasts, but we've been doing a lot of community deep dive on very hard tech subjects. So how do you create massive crowds for Optimize? How would you link your Perforce with your Jira? Blah, 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 blah. So basically just sharing our knowledge out into the world as much as possible and releasing some of our software and our tools. So yeah, I really recommend checking out XRLO if you really want to understand under the hood of what's going on at Rewind.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sol. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for the time, Chris. It's really great to catch up.